Well, I'm now joined by Edward Preece, and Edward is the Chief Operating Officer for Police Digital Service. Edward, welcome to the podcast. What does that mean? What do you do? What do you do?
So, it's a common question that we get. So, Police Digital Service is a bit of an odd organisation. So, we are in technical terms, you'd call us a state-owned enterprise. So, what that basically means is we're a private limited company, but we are fully owned by the public sector. And so, what in our case, the organisations that own us is the 43 police forces across England and Wales, as well as the wider law enforcement community. So each force pays a annual subscription to be part of Police Digital Service, and included as that is not only the 43 forces of England and Wales, but also Police Scotland, Police Service Northern Ireland, as well as other national law enforcement organisations are also part of our membership cadre. So NCA, British Transport Police, College of Policing, and what that means is they collectively represent our members. And they are our members are the ones who benefit from our services. And and in terms of our governance of how that plays out, all of those organisations have some form of representative on our board, essentially. So we have a collective of chiefs on our board. So we've got the NPCC Chief Gavin Stevens is on our board, as well as the chairs of the relevant science and innovation and digital data and technology committees. We've also got several PCCs, Police and Crime Commissioners, on our board, and the Home Office is also represented on there too. So we get the full span of government, sponsoring department, operational policing, and local political policing, I suppose you'd call it, or political representatives. So what that then means in terms of what we do, in terms of our service, is we exist to do digital services for policing.
As it says here.
We're very inventive with the naming.
Yes.
But it's and broadly the way that we break it down in terms of our lines of operation, so to speak, is that we design, build, run, defend, assure, and enable digital services. So if I sort of break those down for you, so design is principally around, and is largely why I'm here today. So I've been speaking about interoperability. So we are responsible for a series of products, which is a national standards library, which is over 200 standards that are available to local forces to enable consistency between them at local level, but ensuring that there's a national approach. We also do something called the blueprints, which are technical configurations of different digital services that local forces can implement, so that, Force X will have the same implementation as Force Y, as Force Z.
And does that improve that communication between them?
Precisely. So the whole idea about that, the term and what we've been speaking on today is about interoperability. So the idea that services are operable between one another. So that's very much our design side, and one of the things that we're going to be publishing in Q1 of next year is going to be an interoperability handbook. So we've been working with industry to get feedback from them around their pain points and what they would like to see more in terms of the guidance and the principles and the procedures and the procurement as well of how they need to consider interoperability into the things that they're selling and that they're integrating. So that is going to be published in the next financial year in a few weeks' time. So that'll be updated on our website, and we can, if anyone's interested, please do reach out to us. So that covers design. The other aspect then is build, and that is where at the national level, where there are systems or solutions that are used by local forces, we are one of the delivery partners that exist in the policing ecosystem that does that. So the Home Office builds a series of solutions themselves through their Home Office digital function, but we exist as a policing-owned organisation to do things at a national level where that exists. So some examples of things that we're in the process of buying, building, or procuring at the moment is a new national firearms license management system, so a single national system for managing firearms, and a few other things as well, systems that we're looking at building. So one is around asset recovery, an IT system there of how assets that are recovered through the proceeds of crime, how they're implemented. So we're in the process of scoping and designing and building what those will look like. Run is really what it says on the tin. That's about systems that are already live, running them and making them available. So we have a standard IT team with service desk that makes available, and that can be anything from provision of IT hardware through to running of applications that might be used by frontline officers. And there's a whole host of different applications we run. And then Defend is probably one of our biggest areas, and that's essentially overseeing the cybersecurity for local forces. So we do all of the sort of threat monitoring for the forces across England and Wales, and we have coverage for the wider law enforcement community too. And the last thing that we do as well, which is the Assure around, which is about all of where a national system goes national. Within our business, we have the policing's chief information security officer who leads on the advice about whether systems are fit to go live. So they do the assurance part of it. And then lastly, wrapping all of that is Enable. So we do customer support of all of that. So quite a mouthful, but that's sort of what we cover.
That's a huge amount. And so when you talk about these, if you look back into the past, it's very much that each county, each area was very much, in a sense, on its own, wasn't it?
Yes.
It's run on its own. What difference do you think you make by, in a sense, bringing it all under one umbrella?
Yeah, so I think one of the good examples of this, and this is something that I spoke about in my talk earlier, is one of the program that sort of launched Police Digital Service around sort of 5-6 years ago was a program called the National Enabling Program. And that was a program that was essentially about moving local forces from on-premise to essentially cloud solutions, and principally about getting all forces to adopt Microsoft 365 and to have that consistency across forces of how they were using those. And so that covered a series of different things. It had a sort of single approach to identity and access management. So across all forces, they have the same approach. It included the cybersecurity that I mentioned, so that you had a consistency in what you were monitoring, and also just generally around making use of the Microsoft 365 productivity stack, I suppose you would call it, Teams, Word, PowerPoint, Excel, the other things that are in it. So that's ensured that there is a consistency across policing. And I think one of the forcing functions that was, in some ways, I suppose probably a lucky accident, was that timed with COVID. So you had it at a time where local forces needed to shift themselves and their forces to be making more use of IT. And so going back to the question about the impact that that's had, is that's enabled nationally a more coherent and cohesive approach to information technology. There's way more to go. There's still a lot of differences between local forces and the national level, what's provided and not. But I think the reality is in the information age, information technology is a key enabler to enabling all operations, be that sort of back office support operations or frontline. And so the ability for systems to talk to one another and to understand one another is a thing that is fundamental to the target operating model for how policing needs to work in the 21st century.
And you sort of bring it to a sort of human level. What difference does it make to the police actually being able to go out there and do their job? Because really, when you you see them saying, "Oh, we're weighed down by paperwork. We've got to do this. We've got to do." Does this make a difference? Does this allow them to actually go out and do the job of policing? Does it give them more time?
Yeah, so there's a couple of examples on that. So if we just think about, so one of the examples that we've been working on is a digital forensics capability solution. So to give an example of how this might operate or could impact frontline policing. Historically, if there was a crime that might say happen and people arrive on scene, the forensic evidence, so the fingerprints or something like that, might be would need to go through a more manual, conventional process for how that would be collected. The digital fingerprints capability is a solution that will enable a photograph to be taken of that and an instant scanning of the database to see whether there is it's a match. And so there's an ability in terms to actually improve time, and so you could maybe act on that evidence more quickly than you would be able to do historically. So digital, that's a good example of how digital solutions have the ability to impact some frontline operations. And I think more generally as well, which is not policing specific, but will be things such as impact of AI. So I mentioned around our blueprints that we've done. Among those, we published earlier this year, or last year, sorry, now, a blueprint for how to configure Copilot. So that provides standard guidance for all forces around that. And so there's a huge opportunity there going forward to forces that are using that and opt to implement it to enable them to harness that as a sort of tool. Our focus very much this is around the technical configuration. So I think going forwards, one of the things that policing is probably going to have to think about, and we've obviously had some high profile examples throughout last year, is the sort of associated guidance from a practitioner level of how those should then be used. But from a technology perspective, the capability is there and exists for policing to use it.
That's right. So how important is it for you to be here at BAPCO, really explaining what you do and why you do it?
Yeah, so I think it's really important. So it's firstly really good for us because we ourselves run the NPCC's Innovation and Digital Summit, which will be happening in October this year. And so it's really great for us to, from just a practical perspective, to see the event and understand different ways in which we can enhance our own event. So there's a practical level there, but from a sort of networking perspective, it's great for us to be able to actually be here and meet with different suppliers, understand and share best practice. We've also been given the opportunity, so we've got a couple of speeches that are going on at the minute. I myself have given one on interoperability that I've discussed a bit now, but we've also got one of my colleagues, Matt Wall, is speaking a bit around adoption of AI in policing and some of the case studies that he's been doing and working on in local forces. So it's great for us as well to sort of showcase ourselves. So we've got a stand here. So there's a whole host of benefits for us, really, but it's also very good for me personally to sort of get out and listen to some of the other talks going on. And I think particularly as well for things, major programs like ESN, the Emergency Services Network, it's great to sort of learn a little bit more about where that's at and what the direction of travel with it is.
And what about sort of the future for your organisation? With as you said, the very name of your digital service, what can you see? What have you got coming up on the horizon?
Yeah, so there's a few things. So, and this was what we spoke a little about in our talk. So the government has published a white paper, and that is branded, anyone can access that online from local to national, and that has proposed that there will be the establishing of a single national police service. And that national police service, the idea is that it will have two elements. It will be it will have an enabling element that will cover all of the what you call corporate services or enabling services, support services, technology, procurement, finance, training, workforce. But it will also have an operational element that will be doing the sort of national crime fighting organisation elements, in addition to local forces, for which there is a review ongoing about how those should be maybe restructured or reconfigured. So it's since the 1960s, there was the last review of the police force structures where we went from about 350 plus down to 43. And so the next stage of what that restructure should look like is ongoing. So that's a very long way of saying the sector itself is going through a process of reconfiguration, which will involve a look at local forces and what the national enabling bodies and operational bodies will be. So we will be one of the organisations that will be eventually consumed into the National Police Service. And that's sort of within the white paper, other organisations that included is the National Crime Agency, College of Policing, Counter-Terrorism Police. And so the concept or the idea is that there will be a large, high-profile National Police Service, a sort of UK FBI is what some people would be calling it. And within that will be technology and digital services, which, as I said, in the information age, are only going to become a bigger part of operational delivery last week.
Just finally, what are you going to take away from here? Well, not stealing or taking anything.
No.
No, what are you actually going to take? What are you taking away from here?
That's a really good question. What am I taking away? I suppose one of the things that for me is within our organisation, the work that I do, it's very, one of the challenges we have is to get very head in the weeds around the sort of day-to-day delivery of, better, cheaper, faster sort of cost reductions on services and products and stuff. And so one of the things that's really good to see, I think, at this is to sort of learn what other challenges or opportunities other partners, suppliers are doing to sort of get us focused. So one of the things that we're going to go into next year is a real big focus on user centricity. And so one of the challenges that we've had is that we're very much, products are always being pushed down to the focus of how do you make them cheaper, or how do you, how do you leaner or whatever. But actually one of the questions we want to do is how do we make them better? And so one of the things that's, while also ideally making them cheaper and faster and whatnot, but the focus for us, I think, into next year is going to be like that. So it's been really good to actually see a lot of the case studies here of what good looks like and what best practice is. And so for me, I think the takeaway is some of the lessons learned of areas where we can improve to be much better in line with a lot of what we've seen and experienced in Finland and Pies.
Well, Edward, thank you so much. And this has been really fascinating. But thanks for joining us today.
Really good to be here.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.